Austin, Texas. Vicki has served as an executive board member and secretary for the National Leadership Council on African American Behavioral Health. She's a founding member and coordinator of the Austin Area African American Behavioral Health Network. She is a certified licensed professional counselor and a mental health first aid instructor. I tell you, Vicki's really helped set the pace in reaching out to African American communities and especially to African American churches. And her work has helped sharpen our awareness of some of the cultural differences when we talk about mental health. And Vicki's going to lead a panel today, Speaking the Language, Mental Health and Minority Communities. And I'm going to let Vicki introduce the rest of our panel. Thank you for being with us.
Good morning, everyone. Again, I'm Vicki Coffey, and we're glad that you joined us here this morning for our coffee chat. So we just want you to sit back and relax, and we're going to have a conversation today, just very lightly. Thanks for raising your cups, guys. We're going to have a conversation this morning with you guys. It's early in Texas, it's raining, and we're grateful for that. Today on our call, we have Tracy Blackfall and Manuel Zamaripa. I will let them give you a 1-second introduction of themselves, 1 minute, and then we'll get started with our coffee chat. Good morning.
Tracy. Good morning. Okay, good morning, everyone. So excited to be here. I live in Columbus, Ohio. I work with the Multi-Ethnic Advocates for Cultural Competence. I am the executive director of Tova's Nest, and we do a lot of work around mental health, suicide prevention, and seeing recovery and resiliency as a reality.
Thanks, Tracy. Welcome.
Hi, I'm Manuel Zamaripa, and I'm a licensed professional counselor, director of the Institute of Chicano Psychology based out of Austin, Texas. Happy to do this conference because San Antonio is my hometown, so it's nice to virtually be in San Antonio. And so we provide community workshops and professional training for mental health providers as well, and consultation in the realm of cultural strengths framework related to the Latinx Mexican American community. So I like to stop there.
Awesome. Thank you, Tracy and Manuel. So we're going to go ahead and dive right in. We are supposed to be having a conversation this morning about working and supporting the mental health of people that are communities of color. And, you know, this topic right now seems to be kind of the hot topic. Everyone is recognizing, I wouldn't say for the first time, particularly for those people of color like ourselves, but other communities are starting to recognize that we live in an environment, not just today, but it's highlighted during these times where there's a lot of stress, where we live with a lot of anxiety, and our access and ability to be able to relate and connect with the world is very challenging. And that has an impact and a toll on our mental health and wellness. And so we just wanted to spend a few minutes. I think we have about 25 minutes or so this is going to go real quick. So we just wanted to spend a few minutes and grab your coffee again and just sit and have a conversation and a dialogue this morning and just get real about this topic. So right now, again, just in this climate that we're in, both with the violence that we're seeing, the political environment, COVID, all these things that are highlighting the inequities that impact people of color on a daily basis, but they're like in the spotlight right now, kind of like us, right? And so knowing that people, colleagues, friends, are looking for suggestions on how to connect and be supportive of those who are different than themselves. So knowing that, what's one of the first things that you think a clinician or even a colleague or a friend can do to be supportive?
I defer to Tracy.
Oh,
I think start us off if that's okay.
Okay, thanks. I think one of the things I feel people can do is have a better understanding of the communities you're working with. Mm-hmm. And so when you go to that community, do some of your pre-work, know about what they have going on, some of the culture pieces. And a lot of times I tell people, go visit, go to that community and kind of check them out.
Yeah, I think along the lines of doing the pre-work, I think one of the things that we know about humans, about us as people, is this is not a point of blame at all. It's a natural occurrence. We tend to surround ourselves with people that are like us in some core values and core world perspectives. And that happens especially in terms of identities of privilege. And so if we look at the core people around us, a lot of the times, most naturally, there are a lot of ways in which we share identities of privilege and core values and core worldviews. And so and that's fine, of course. So the challenge then is to recognize that if we stay in that, then we can become encapsulated, culturally encapsulated.
Hmm.
And so it's our responsibility, if we're interested in the well-being of others, people different from us, if we're in the mental health community, that we push against that natural inclination. We
Mhm.
stop and we do that pre-work and we say, okay, my safe space are with people like me. How can I push myself to see the validity in others' experiences that I have no connection with, the validity in their perspective? Um, and so I think that's the foundation, a good starting point.
Absolutely. So, in other words, I have friends, and I know I'm their only Black friend,
Hmm.
and which is fine. But we're just saying that challenge yourself to maybe do some things different outside of your comfort zone. And Tracy
Mhm.
mentioned visit communities where you're thinking about working. Maybe go to a church or attend a temple, go to a
Yeah,
temple or a mosque where someone is, so that you can learn about the culture and not just wear out your one or two friends of color,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
right.
Right? Because
Yeah,
we get,
yeah.
go ahead.
It's just that it's not enough to have those transactional interactions. Because many of us can say, well, I'm from a different cultural background, race, and I work with people that are different than me or that are marginalized. I work with these communities in my job for the last 20, 30 years.
Mhm.
Sometimes that's not enough. I mean, if you're not challenging yourself, you can serve them well, but
Mhm.
you go home to the values and the perspectives that guide your life. And so, unless you get out there, like Tracy suggested, and challenge yourself, um, that's not enough. It's like having that one or two friend of color. Sometimes that doesn't mean that you're pushing yourself and pushing your experiences.
Mhm.
And what about, I know we've talked before, obviously, to prepare for this call, and we had very rich dialogue. And so one of the things we talked about was also being willing to learn,
Mhm.
because when we come into spaces, we can't just live with what we've read in those books. It's great to read, but you have to feel people and really understand their energy and understand that we're not a monolith community. So that we look very
Right.
different, even though Tracy and I are both African American. I'm from the Texas Hill Country. She's from Ohio. That's, a whole different world. So
Yes.
we don't come with the same exact thing. So you can't say when I talk to my one or two Black friends or brown friends that I understand now that culture, because that culture is so varied, right?
Yes.
So
That's a good
definitely
point.
being willing to learn and to recognize that you don't come with all the answers. So
Mhm.
Mhm.
when we're talking about resources and supports, there are multiple factors we know that keep people that look like us, people of color, from seeking help. There's lots of things. There's things like stigma, lack of quality resources and services, or culturally appropriate providers. We know there's a shortage when it comes to the workforce. There's
Mhm.
research, of course, tells us that there is limited access to mental health resources and supports. And that's a huge deterrent for people to get access and support. So can you talk a little bit about community-based support, what it is, why is that important in communities of color?
Mhm.
Want to go, Manuel?
Oh, sure. Okay. I just wanted to, well, I think one of the things that we know, and we don't stereotype, like you were saying too, Vicky, about particular members of certain communities. On the other hand, we do know that there are certain threads that are common across communities, and for a lot of communities of color, family, community, extended relations, extended family. is important, and it's the first level of trust. You know, are we going to access a service if the people around me, whether it's my faith community, whether it's my extended family, if they don't access these resources? So, so the mental health community has a lot to do to gain the trust of these communities, so that our community resources can then advocate, like, this is a resource you should go to. This mental health profession is something to access. So I think that's one of the things that occurs to me.
Yep. What about you, Tracy?
I think trust is the biggest thing, and I also think that these mental health professionals, these services can be provided in churches. It can be provided in the community. I hear a lot of people saying services are provided in locations that they can't get to. And when I go into a facility, I've gone and just looked. The facilities, there's not anybody that looks like me on the wall.
Yeah, that's
The
so
person that
important.
greets me, she has no clue, and she may even be rude. You know,
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
first point of contact, that person should have sometimes just manners and compassion and respect for people.
And recognition too. I think that it takes a lot for people of color to walk and to go into an establishment, particularly when on the door or on the big sign it's labeled the mental health center or whatever it is. It takes a lot to get through those doors. And again, we talked a little bit about the stigma and the things that make that challenging. And thank you guys. I know my eyes keep shifting and we're still learning this whole computer world, right? But I'm looking at some of the things in the chat, and it's just very helpful. We appreciate your interaction and recognition that you're sharing with us as well. Thank you so much for that. And so as we talk about just engaging people, it's important, again, you mentioned that trust is so important, and that I think as a person of color and people of color, I can only speak for myself, right?
Yes.
That I can tell when I go somewhere and someone really doesn't want me there, or doesn't feel comfortable with me being there, or is trying to overact like they understand my plight, right? Or my struggle or where I'm coming from. And so it's so important for us as providers and people who are in the helping profession to know that we have to engage and embrace non-traditional people, natural healers, all the people that may not have the PhDs or the doctors behind their name. That's important. We're not minimizing that, but recognizing that true ability to understand and be empathic is what's so important. And there's a whole lot of research and conversation that we could have around people of color, that they only can see people of color. We're not saying that, right? We're saying that it's important that the person has the heart and the willingness to check themselves, to learn, and to be introspective, and then to be honest that they don't exactly know what's going on with you. So you've shared that people of color need access to resources and support, that we need that, right, in our own communities, and that it's important. And if given the choice, people of color would prefer mostly to seek support from someone who looks like us, and at a minimum, someone who understands and respects our culture. So you both have extensive experience actively engaging and partnering with communities of color, right? Can you both share your some effective strategies just for engaging communities of color in the non-traditional way?
Sure.
And non-traditional is not non-traditional to us, right? When I say
Right.
I'm saying non-traditional to people that are not people of color, because it's traditional for us to do some of the things that you guys are going to share. So go ahead. I'm sorry. I thought non-traditional. This isn't non-traditional for us. This is tradition. So what are some traditional ways that we seek help that are not the mental health centers? That's not the first place we run to, right?
Right.
I'm going to let you go.
Pick a straw.
Oh, you want to go? Okay.
Any color.
Well, I think definitely there are people, for a lot of communities of color, faith is important. Again, not to stereotype, but also not ignoring the thread that we see that's there for many of us. And so faith leaders, sometimes that's more traditional religion, but sometimes that could be spiritual or folk healers for some of us. And so those are important representatives. They're important healers in the community. And I think one of the points of connection is that for those of us in the mental health field, to begin to think of ourselves as healers as well. I mean, there's the professional piece, but what we are doing is healing and looking for that point of connection, which is a both and perspective, not an either or. And you were alluding to that, Vicky. It's like we need both
Yeah.
the science and the professions that we have, and we cannot ignore the centuries
Yes.
of wisdom that come from many communities of color, ancestrally, the cultural wisdom, and people, we now recognize the notion of intergenerational trauma, but we
Yes.
cannot forget intergenerational wisdom.
Mhm.
And so we always lead with our cultural strengths
That's
because
right.
they are there, they're
Yes.
present. And part of dealing with our cultural wounds is, instead of fixing the cultural wounds that the mental health field always tries to go toward, is first uncovering the cultural strengths that are present
Yes.
in those
Absolutely.
communities. And that can be
Yes.
some of the healing. That
Awesome.
can be
Thank
part
you.
of it. So,
Yes. Good
Tracy?
stuff.
Awesome.
Someone mentioned promotores in the chat. Absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah.
Tracy, what would you
And,
add to
and, I,
that?
and I think that as well, when you talked about generations of strengths that we have, when I'm working with faith leaders and they have been so devalued and so not included at the table until everything's done, and they want them to share this product, so to speak. So I would add as well in that prayer and valuing that. That's one of the biggest things I hear faith leaders say is that at the beginning of their meetings, we must have prayers.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that I wanted to share in this coming together of people need to be mindful of that posture and how they
Yeah.
present themselves. If you're going to a faith community and you've got on makeup and that faith community does not wear makeup, or you go there with pants and the women in that faith community, and I use myself as an example, they don't wear pants. There's a respect that goes with going to these communities. I also think it's, again, I keep going back to go to your communities that you want to serve, see what they're doing. I've had a clinician tell me personally, I wanted to talk about my faith and how much better I felt. And he said, "Oh, no, you can't bring that in here." So imagine how I felt afterward when I went home. Everything I've been taught, everything I love, there was no value in it for him. So how could he ever help me?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Absolutely.
Right.
And I think we also have to recognize that we, people of color, but all of us, most of us, are body, mind, and soul, body, mind, and spirit.
Yes.
And so,
Yes.
again, there's not a disconnect. When I come to you and I'm seeking help and I'm trusting you to help me, I need all those things to be integrated for you to talk to me from a level that impacts and touches all those pieces of me, because I'm not just Vicky from the neck up, right? I'm not just
Right.
mind. I'm body. And so my physical, the way that my physical feelings are impacting my mind, all of those things are connected. And so, true for us as people of color, spirituality has been one of those things that has kept us strong and resilient all of these years. So if we're talking about creating support, we cannot leave out that piece.
No.
Just, what we say a lot of the times is that for a lot of our people, there is no distinction between spiritual health and mental health.
Right.
That line is not as distinct as it is in the textbooks or in the professional field.
And I think one of the mistakes sometimes people make is, if I support you, if I embrace who you are and where you are, that means I'm encouraging religion, and it does not mean that at all.
No.
What does that mean?
It means that you're respecting who I am. It means that you are willing to listen, and that's another piece that's missing. And if people could just listen without the biases, without the body language that says that you really don't support what I'm saying, but you're just going to do this right now because it's what you have to do. That's where you lose a lot of people. So people don't realize that who you are can be a big deterrent to people coming back.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's why it goes back to that
Yeah.
first thing we started talking about,
Right.
was
Goes back to the
knowing
first thing.
yourself and recognizing what your prejudices and your biases and your stereotypes that you carry from your childhood and into adulthood. That's so important. That's more than anything else. That's the main thing.
And be willing to look at other people's values, like Tracy was saying, as valid. You know, I think that's what it means, like recognizing the values of people that guide people's lives.
That's right. So we've got about 4 or 5 minutes left. God, you know, guys, I'm almost through. I don't drink coffee. Oddly enough, my last name is Coffee, right? And I hate it. I drink tea. But we've got about 5 minutes left. I want to be mindful of people's times. We could talk all day. But one of the last things that we talked about offline that I think is so important to bring to this, I think I mentioned that having a safe space, that a mental health space as a clinician or a helper, and even bigger than that, as a person of color, somewhere where you can go to get that refuge from the world, where you feel like there are other people that are like you, that understand you. And for clinicians of color who work in the mental health space, we often find ourselves in places too where we're the only person of color, we're the only person of our particular culture, and that can be very challenging. And so recently I read an article about people of color needing spaces without white people. And we know that this can hit people kind of hard, but we're being our authentic selves. We're having coffee. You guys are sitting in, looking in our living rooms. Well, 3 living rooms, right? So when I shared this article with colleagues, we had a really open discussion and dialogue around this topic. So let's spend our last few minutes talking about this topic. What are your thoughts on spaces where people of color are just with themselves and can be themselves? What does that look like?
I think one of the things and I'll use myself, when I'm in that space, I'm vulnerable. I can take my mask off, and it's a mask I feel I have to wear 24/7 when I'm out in the world. And I know people may not understand this, but I'm not going to be that person in front of everyone. I come with my yesterdays. So my grandmother, my mother, they've taught me things and they've said things to me, and it's helped me survive, and it helps me to be strong. So it's like one time I was sharing with someone, how can I take my mask off? I mean, how can I tell other people to take their mask off when I can't take mine off? And the best space for me is in that space with people who look like me. I think for people of color, we are asked to do things that no other people are asked to do. Other people are allowed to have those spaces, but for whatever reason, we're not always given that opportunity.
But that's exclusive. That's exclusive, right? That's not fair, because white people want to learn from us. Like, they want to sit in the rooms with us and learn, and they can learn a lot from us if they get to be in there listening to us, people of color, talk about our experiences. So why is that not okay sometimes?
Because I need to be able to say what I want to say
without being offensive, right?
Yeah. And some of it's not real pretty. Some of the things that have been said to me, how I've been treated, how I've been looked at. And again, I want to be me and take that mask off. And I can't do it all the time in all those other spaces.
Thanks, Tracy. Manuel?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the work that I do, we do together, me and my wife. And one of the things that she says, similar to what Tracy says, is that, a lot of the times we are guerreros and guerreras, warriors, and we need a space where we can put our armor down. And we take so many hits.
Yes.
And it doesn't matter if they're intentional or not intentional, we're still taking the hits. And we need a place where we can put that armor down, that weight, and put that down so that we can just be vulnerable and be ourselves. And the other piece is, of course, we're talking a lot about privilege, white privilege, and that's a good time for people from those communities to sit with and reflect the degree of privilege that they have in this country, where almost any space they walk into, they can almost always guarantee to be the majority, or to be heard, or to be respected, to be given that intentional or unintentional kind of ear. And we don't, that's not a guarantee for a lot of us in our community. So we need to replenish, we need to nurture ourselves, before we move back out into those
Yeah.
spaces. And that's
Yeah.
simply the reality.
Yes.
So that's what we need. It's what a plant needs. We can talk about whether, for example, a plant needs to be in this context, that context. We can have all kinds of debates of what should and shouldn't be and how our society should be and what we should strive for. But if you don't water something that needs nourishing, it's gonna wither, and
That's
we need
right.
to be nurtured.
That's right. And we need that space where we can just not worry about being offensive. And I think
Yeah.
for me, a lot of times, and I've gotten better at my job because we really are trying to create a safe space where everybody can be their authentic selves. But for me, I just need the opportunity to say something in a dialect that I'm used to talking to people that look like me with, right? And again, that's not offensive. I spend a lot of time in my head in meetings with other people that are, where there's more diversity, processing and making sure that before something comes out of here,
Yes.
that it's gone all around here 100 times to
Yes.
come out. So I don't want to hurt someone's feelings and it's my truth.
So when do you ever get to tell your truth when you do that? You don't.
You don't. You spend your time with that mask on. A mask is that term's, I guess, not right now, but you just have to constantly filter everything that comes out of your mouth.
Well, here's another thing about the mental health field. Sometimes we have to go straight back to mental health 101. It's funny when culture and race are thrown into it. It feels like a whole different conversation because doesn't the mental health field know that when people share similar pains, similar stresses, similar diagnosis, that it's good to be with like-minded, with people that share that experience. That's what counseling groups are about. That's what therapy groups are about. And it's like, oh yeah, of course, that has its place. People that have similar traumas go with each other so they can understand that experience. 101, basic. You throw race into it, and all of a sudden it feels like a new idea. Like, they need their own spaces. It's like, are you a mental health professional or not? I mean, it's a very basic concept.
Right. It's like they're being exclusive. How? When you're with it's just considered another one of those affinity groups, right? And it should be okay. So guys, you know what? This has been great. I think we're going to get the gong or the shepherd's hook that pulls us off of this conversation. This has been awesome. And we can go offline and keep having our coffee and keep talking, right?
Yes.
So I think we are about out of time. We're at 10:56. I think we're supposed to stop at 10:55. It's 56-ish. So someone give us the cue or turn off the screens because we're going to keep talking until we do that. No, I think we're good. Thank you, guys. This was excellent. This was so fun.
This was awesome.
Before y'all hang up and have your coffee talk, first of all, thanks for being so honest and authentic and having a great conversation with us this morning. A couple things you were talking about, Tracy, going to where people are that you want to learn about. And NAMI National had our convention in New Orleans 2 years ago, and we did some videos, and one of the videos was in a barber shop, in an African-American barber shop, and the barber, the guy who owns the place, was having mental health moments, talking to people in the barber shop as he was cutting hair about mental health. And I thought, wow, that guy's taking it to the streets. He's really living it out. I want to invite each of y'all. There's going to be a 12:40 p.m. workshop on something called Next Steps and we're going to talk about another program, Bridges to Care. So if y'all can join us offline, just log in and come to the session and be part of the conversation. We'd love to have you there. And with that, gosh, Vicki, man, this is great. We need to do this more often.
We do.
It has been nice. Thank you guys so much. Thanks for being candid and vulnerable, really. Thank you.
And thank you, Tracy.
And thanks for having us.
Thank you. Thank you all. Thank you.
We will join the audience back in about 5 more minutes.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Bye.